So one argument that I used for sort of, if I can pick your brain on what you think about this, something that really compelled me in really basic form is just that premise one, it's wrong to cause harm to animals unnecessarily, right? If you're causing harm to an animal, but you don't have to, then that's the wrong thing to do. Um, when we buy and consume animal products, we are causing harm to these animals unnecessarily, right? Because there's a mountain of research that suggests that a whole foods vegan diet is one of the healthiest diets that a person can have. So we're not doing this to animals because we need to. We're doing it because it feels good or it's convenient or it's culture, right? So if it's wrong to cause animals harm to animals unnecessarily, and we're causing harm to animals unnecessarily by buying and consuming products, then it's wrong to buy and consume these products. That's a real simple way of breaking it down, but I think it's a good way to start the conversation. So, what do you think of that argument?
Okay, I've heard that one. I
Yeah.
have, vegan friends and people in my life
Okay, cool.
that bring that up. So,
Right.
I mean, whose fault is it? Is it the consumer's fault or is it the manufacturer's fault?
Right.
That's my immediate instinct is like
Mm-hmm.
the consumers, going off of A, what is convenient, and B, what they want, right? Um, they can only want what is in their range of options.
Right.
Otherwise, if they don't know about it, if it's not an option, even if they want it, they can't get it, so it doesn't matter. So they will end up wanting something else. That's like kind of how consumerism works. Like you see something that's not in your price range, you go with the other thing. Like
Hmm.
that's how that works. So
Right. Well, the way that
not
I,
necessarily.
yeah, the way that I kind of think, just to kind of go off your first comment there, was that I think that there's a huge amount of responsibility on the consumer because of supply and demand, right? Like when we buy these products, we create a demand for these products, and therefore there's a supply. And like these industries exist because we pay for these products and demand them. But if we stop paying for these products and bought vegan alternatives or, what have you, then those industries would eventually perish and the supply would change to a more sort of plant-based food system, right? Does that kind of address the concern that you had, or was there more to what you were saying?
I mean, that's like where the thought usually goes is in that
Yeah,
direction.
right,
Yes, it's my choice to buy something, so therefore it is my problem if I'm the one, consuming animal products,
right,
using animal products in my life.
right.
Um,
Mm,
so the option itself could still be eliminated despite that, despite the demand.
hmm.
Um, I don't see why it couldn't be.
Right. So, do you think that you would go vegan in the future then, or what do you think about in terms of yourself then about the choices that you might make in the future? Or
Um, I, I mean, this is just me personally. I
yeah, that's what I want to
appreciate
hear.
I appreciate the history of our species, and that includes, our ancient traditions. They interest me. Part of that is hunting and gathering. So like,
Right.
I do enjoy studying. You know, as a hobby, field botany and
Oh, cool.
uh,
Nice.
etc.
Yeah.
Because I like to know what's edible and what's not in my area, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I also enjoy, fishing. I only do it on occasion. I almost never even do it anymore. I was born as an animal catcher. I would go out into the wild and grab a snake,
Mm,
and I would do 1,000 lizards a year, 100 snakes a year, and like try to beat my record or whatever. And
mm,
lately, I've been like, well, why am I doing this? I could just be taking pictures of them and not disturbing these animals out in the wild.
right.
And now that I've stopped doing that, like, I feel better about it. Like it's okay. Getting pictures of them is cooler than grabbing them.
Oh,
And
that's good. Yeah.
the other thing is like, but I kind of like miss it, like every time I see a snake, I get that itch to just
Well,
go out and
I,
like
I,
handle it.
yeah, like we say to people, I mean, old habits die hard is the expression. Um,
And I
so,
was born
but
and raised eating animal products.
yeah, but earlier you had talked about like appreciating history, appreciating our evolution per se. Are you saying that because human beings have done this to animals for so long and it's so ingrained in our previous way of life, therefore it's justified that we continue to do it into the future. Was that what you
No,
were
not
sort of?
necessarily.
No,
Not
no. Okay.
necessarily. It's just an explanation as to why. Like,
Right.
one of
Yep.
the reasons like why like a person who consumes animal products might choose to do so, including
Yeah.
myself.
Right.
Not
No.
necessarily a justification. We understand
Right.
that it's wrong.
Yeah. I think that's a really smart distinction that you just made between like the descriptive parts of morality and then the normative force of morality, right? There are reasons why people make certain choices, and that's like moral psychology. And then there is the actual justification for those actions in the present, which is normative ethics, right? Which is a separate thing. So to focus more so on that normative side of things, then it kind of sounded like you agree that it's unjustified or maybe even morally wrong to be
It
doing this
can
to
be.
animal. It can
It
be okay,
absolutely can be. Yes, in any standard conversation, 100%.
right. So do you think that it's morally wrong to buy and consume animal products then? Is that where this leads, or what do you think?
I mean, probably,
Yeah, right.
probably. Yeah, it's something that I should, perhaps address and,
Yeah,
incorporate into my, but it's not like I'm doing it to satisfy somebody. It's not like I'm doing it to make other people think that I'm the good guy. Like, I don't
no,
care
you're
what you
right.
think about me.
You're right.
I'm going to, yeah, it's for me. It's for myself. It's for how I feel, like,
Yeah,
and because I appreciate animals, it's complicated because I appreciate biology. I appreciate animals. I study
right,
that.
right. Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
so I feel a natural guilt.
So yeah,
So
and to add to what you were saying, I think that's right that you are doing it to not feel as much like a hypocrite, I guess, because you have these feelings for animals in life and whatnot. But on the other hand, there's this practice that we engage in that causes a lot of unnecessary harm to those beings that you find so worth appreciating. So it is a relief in that sense. But thinking about benefits, it's also namely a benefit to the animals, right? Like we got to think about it also from their perspective. I think this was really helpful for me in sort of starting to actualize these values in my own life was, putting yourself in the animal's shoes, right? And thinking about how much of a benefit is to them and getting to keep their life and not having to experience such torment, right? Um, yeah. So that sounds great that you're thinking about it. I have all kinds of resources and this great website. I'll just drop it in the chat there, and you can take it if you want. But it's filled with great sources about a lot of the ethics that we've been talking about from great thinkers that I've come to appreciate, and also great sources on like how to go vegan, like vegan recipes, and also great things like Happy Cow, it's called, which is an app that will tell you sort of the vegan vegetarian options in your local area, and just a number of other great resources. I recommend this website to everybody. And yeah, if you're interested, and you should check it out.
So here's another idea, and I
Sure.
will.
Yeah.
I'll look
Yeah.
into it.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Sounds good.
Let's consider the far future of humanity,
Right.
like the very far future of humanity.
Uh-huh.
Um, say that we are capable of colonizing other planets in the future.
Right.
Just pretend like that's a fact and that's going to happen. I'm not saying that it will, but let's imagine that that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
Um, where are they getting their food from? Like, if 100% of it is going to crops, to a vegan diet, they would struggle compared to a society that has more options for food. Just because food is vital for survival, and the more food you have, the more population could
Right.
increase. So
Yeah.
what
I have an
that's another.
idea.
Go ahead.
Yeah, my first response is because we say this to a lot of people, they're worried about sustainability and they're worried about food security when it comes to telling people to go vegan, concerns like what you're having now. And it comes down to the fact that in order to produce the amount of animals that we create in North America, they consume most of the grain and plant food that we grow, right? Humans don't, they do in order to raise them, right? So if we didn't eat the animals, then we wouldn't also need to grow all of that additional plant food to feed them. So you remove animals from the equation, and we've got all of this new land space and energy to use in order to produce plant food to feed humans, right? Some people have argued in scientific research, that we could even solve world hunger with the amount of food that we could theoretically grow in North America using all of that land just for plants. So when talking about, like in your example, colonizing other planets and such, it sounds like, based on what I just mentioned, that we would actually have more options and more food overall if we just ate all plants directly from the earth rather than feeding them to a middleman, right? The animal, and then we eat the animal, right? It would actually be more efficient overall to just use the plant. So, and it sounds like from someone who's grown up in a culture where meat eating is the thing, right? Removing animal products sounds like it's a huge limiter to the amount of options of food. But something I've come to discover after going vegan is, I'm appreciating more cuisine from around the world, Indian food, Mediterranean food, and learning more about all the options there are with plants because there's a lot more than I was previously aware of when I lived on an animal product diet. So I imagine that we're just going to discover more options as we think that far into the future, like you are, about colonizing other planets and just more things that we can do with plants and how to prepare them and how to grow them and artificially select them to become new and different species. Like I think there's a lot that we can do with just plants and overall would be more sustainable and more food secure by just growing plants. Yeah. Does that kind of address what you were talking about there?
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It's well put as well. I mean, everything so far has been. You've done a good job.
Nice.
Um, so,
Thank you.
what about all these people out there that are absolutely resistant, that are not willing to make the transition, and their potential generations to come that have the potential to further the needless slaughter of animals? What
Yeah.
is to be done about them? How do you fix that?
The people that won't. I think you sort of have to think about them. I think it's helpful to compare the injustice of animals, this massive injustice happening, compare that to prior injustices like slavery or sexism or patriarchy or slave,
But then again, there are people that support those things.
there are, right. So there's
Bad
always,
eggs.
so when, yeah, there's always going to be a number of bad eggs, and we can't avoid that. But we can't let that stop us from doing the best we can to promote what is true and what is morally right. Like if we were living in
Yeah.
the antebellum South in the United States and I said, well, there's going to be Ku Klux Klan members in the future who are for slavery. Therefore, we should continue the institution of slavery and continue to bring people over from Africa and propagate this institution. Like, no, that wouldn't be a sound argument, right? So, there's gonna be defectors and there's no stopping that, but it's if it's true and if it's right, then we have to do our best to keep that at a minimum, right? Like any other lawbreaker out there, right? I think that's
Yeah.
how, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. I mean, an effort is better than none at all. I can see that.
Yeah, and
Um,
and it's making a big difference. I mean, like I think we're already experiencing a lot of change. Like vegan products are becoming more available. There's more alternatives coming up. Like where I live, there's an Odd Burger opening up recently, and for people and my friends who are vegan, this is like a big event. But just little things like that. There's all kinds of new changes being made. I think in Canada, even just recently, there was a huge dairy company that has committed to openly with its customers and its board members or whatever that they are going to switch to a plant-based milk production rather than dairy because they think they're actually going to save money by producing plants instead of producing dairy cows. I forget the name of the company, but this is an ongoing thing in current events right now in Canada where I am. So changes are happening, and I think even like the outreaching I'm doing now, like I wasn't vegan 2 years ago, and now because somebody else made me, and it's spreading like it's an exponential growth of people. So I think it's time. I think that people in history have known for a long time that we shouldn't be eating animals like this. I mean, Gandhi, Leonardo da Vinci, Albert Einstein all had the idea that this was not a morally correct practice. And in the past, it just wasn't something that I think human beings could do because it wasn't as practical or available. But now we're at a state where, we've got the technology to spread the information and grow our food differently. And people are changing their minds, and it's working. So, Yeah, I think it's inevitable, really.
I mean, honestly, I'll probably make the transition myself. I just haven't for a long time, and there's some
Yeah.
guilt associated with that. And I have, have had these
Yeah.
thoughts for years, and
Oh, good.
part of
Yeah.
it is one of my spiritual beliefs, and that one of
Hmm.
that is that I could have been born as any other being. I could have been born as one of those
Right.
animals,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
so. Like
Hmm.
looking into the eyes of another being, it's like I'm looking into a potential past life or some crazy shit. But that's just how I feel.
Exactly. Exactly.
And
No.
that kind of thought, yeah, powerful.
Yeah. No, I think you're totally right. I think you tapped into something that a lot of people have felt. I mean, in Hindu culture, there's the idea of karma, right? That you and reincarnation. And so in their culture, that what you're feeling, that sort of sympathy for what you could have been, is very real. And you're interested in philosophy, so maybe you know about John Rawls. And the original position is a famous argument in political philosophy about thinking about what sort of principles in our social contract should we agree to in a society. And he asks you to imagine yourself in the original position, which is before you were born, without your race, without your gender, without your age, without any of these biases. What sort of rules would you want your society to have? And it there's a great opportunity there to include not just gender, race, and this and that, but species too. Like, what if you could have been born as another species? What kind of moral principles do we want our world to be based on if you could be born into the world as any one of these species, right? We want it to be one where anything that can experience harm is protected, and we don't harm other beings unless it's absolutely necessary, right? Um, and so that means veganism, right? So yeah, I think you make a great point. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, it's been a good conversation for sure. Like I
Yeah.
said, I've had these thoughts before, and I've definitely
Good.
considered making the transition.
Yeah.
And there's resources in my area. I get the whole convenience thing. Like part of
Yeah.
the reason why I consume animal products is out of convenience and ignorance. Like I don't know what this shirt is made out of. I don't know that kind of
Well,
thing.
and
So
that's a huge motivating force too. I think like a lot of people, they understand that it's wrong, but they have problem putting it into action. This is very common in normative ethics and philosophy in general. There's people who know what's right but just can't do it, and there's some disconnect there. But I think that three things that really helped me were learning the process behind how the product is made. Like if I pick up a carton of free range eggs, most consumers in the grocery store, they don't think twice about it. But if you really did the research and thought, okay, how is this made from step 1 to whatever, right? And you see the horrifying process that has to happen, you're thinking, okay, this is a lot of people just turn around and go, this is disgusting. I don't even want to touch this, right? And another thing was surrounding yourself with other vegans and like-minded people. Like you said, you had vegan friends. If you're interested in making the transition, talk to them more about it. Ask them questions, what it was like for them. And when you hear more about their perspective and how they did it, it's another motivating force. It makes you feel like it's easy, like I can do it. It's not that hard. And the third thing was learning about alternatives and vegan cuisine and different options that are out there for you. And like I said, all this stuff is on that website. So if you are interested, check that out and you'll find all three of those things. You'll find how the industry works. You can watch Dominion on there. You can find a network to Anonymous for the Voiceless and organization of other vegans, and then also suggestions about alternatives and all of these things. So the motivation can be found in those resources for sure. Yeah.
I'll check it out. I mean, I have the tab open right now. I'm probably gonna give it a look after the conversation
Sweet.
ends. So I
Awesome.
got you. So how did
That's
you
good.
make the transition?
Me, I was studying philosophy. I recently finished my BA, and I read Peter Singer. I read Animal Liberation. Um, if you've heard of that before, a very famous book. And it described some of the processes behind how animals are how they're processed, and I was disgusted. I began looking at different arguments for the moral consideration of animals. I read Gary Francione, I read Tom Reagan, a number of authors around animal ethics. I found no way to justify what we do to animals. And so I ended up defending those positions, but without actually being vegan. So I was being a total hypocrite. And I caught myself being a hypocrite and said, that's enough. I better start living by what I'm preaching, right? So and it was just sort of through school now. And then a few months after that, I started doing more outreaching, talking to other people about it. And then a little after that, I got into activism and doing more of TV outreach, it's called. If you've seen that before, if you know the people with the masks and the TVs, the animal slaughter footage and that, and getting to know people through that, which was a huge motivation, a huge source of happiness for me. And yeah, that's kind of my journey. Yeah.
Wow, I mean that's a powerful one.
Mhm. Yeah.
Doesn't exactly sound simple, but I guess it never is.
No, it's not. Yeah, but it's worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, I
All
mean here
right.
I am catching myself as a hypocrite, so I'll do my best.
Not for long. Yeah, I'm sure yeah, conversations like these can be a wake-up call sometimes for people.
Hmm.
But yeah.
Well,
So,
thank you for outraging me. I appreciate that.
yeah, this was great. I'm happy it went so well. You were a great person to talk to. So, yeah, I'll wish you a good night and farewell and good luck to you.
Good luck on your future endeavors.
Thanks. Okay, take care. Bye.
Peace out.